Today I'm joined by Arno Barlow, owner of Combative Concepts in Pretoria with decades of real-world experience in personal protection, working in high-risk environments and working alongside high-profile individuals. We're going to be breaking down close-quarter combat, what it really is, what most people tend to get often dangerously wrong, and why your current training might simply not be enough when violence hits at arm's length. We're also unpacking a new advanced CQC course that is launching in conjunction with Fortis Proactive Defence Solutions and who actually needs this level of training in South Africa today. Arno, good morning.
Good morning, Rian.
Welcome to the channel. Very happy to chat to you.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for that. I think your English airtime must almost be finished after that intro. Very nice intro. I really appreciate it. And thanks for having me. Whatever we're going to talk about, I hope our viewers and listeners enjoy and find something useful out of it. And can you see, I actually got my only tactical T-shirt on. I had to go deep in my cupboard. Just have my tactical pen in there. And now we're good to go. So now we can do the thing.
Thank you for dressing up for us. We appreciate that.
The shirt smells a little bit bad because it's been in the cupboard for years. So I just had to locate it.
I have many shirts like that with that little cupboard smell to them. Yes.
Yeah.
Arno, for those who do not know of your background, because obviously there are many people out there who know about you, you've spent decades in personal protection and real-world environments. What would you say are the key experiences that shaped how you approach violence and threat management and ultimately then close-quarter combat?
Yes, Rian. Okay, this is a kind of a multi-tier question that you actually have. And maybe I must rewind a little bit and explain to the people how I got to where I am today. Because I always say history is kind of important. And just summing up, because anybody can come up and spit out nice quotes and things like that without any substance from where it started. So I'm going to make it quick. I don't want to bore the viewers. So about early 2000, I started in the close protection industry. I was already giving basic firearms training in those days, but I started doing it for a very reputable company full-time. So in that time, I mean, I've been shooting since the age of 12. That's when I got my first little Beretta pistol, and I started studying the whole subject of firearms, mainly handguns and defensive things. So in that time, in the early years, I had some personal and professional confrontations, and unfortunately still have the scars today to show for it. I very quickly realized that there's a huge disparity between real life and training. Keeping that in mind, training cannot simulate real life. Let's get that out of the way. Training can never be real life. But the gap was immense. So you had study material that tell you this. You have real life that's close to what people wrote about. And then you've got training in isolation. You had firearms training and let's call it fighting training on the one side. But the two didn't speak to each other. So, and basically in those days, all my confrontations was close. We call it bad breath, nipple to nipple type of scenarios. So I started looking around, and this was before the days of the internet and things like that. I looked around at systems that was available. Now I've had fast moving, pointing things moving towards me. And I looked at a couple of stars and I'm like, there's no ways I'm catching this or I'm doing this and that. So fast forward, I used to buy a lot of magazines, combat handguns and SWAT magazines, whatever. And I saw, it's a weird story. I saw this videotape series of Kelly McCann. Here's one of the videos. This was early 2000. Now, if you look closely to it, I'm veering off. Can you see this man has been shooting with a dot since the late 1990s? Anyway, guys, so there's nothing new about it. So obviously there was some marketing hype towards these videos and things like that. But I bit the bullet. I bought my first VH. Maybe some of you users don't even know what that tape looks like. Okay, this is what a tape looks like. So I ordered this, but while I was ordering this, I realized I didn't have a TV, so I had to buy a TV and a video player as well. I had to go to Dior's. But in any case, I got this video set and I started watching it. And as I started watching it, everything started making sense. Now, I saw the gap between fighting and shooting. And this is what he did great. He closed that gap to some actual fighting and shooting. Because even if you say you were in a gunfight, what's the word that sticks out? Fight. It's a fight. You understand? Every fight. But we try to isolate and say it's a shooting incident. It's a fight. And, you know, one of the things is, how do you learn to fight? You can't learn to fight on the shooting range. You can only learn to fight to actually fight. You understand what I'm saying? You actually have to get physical of study to understand how to fight. And there it started. I then went out to friends and said, listen, we need to test some of this stuff. Got some friends together and we used to bang it out. Actually, even in our clients' offices, in the car park and in the car areas, we used to train. And I realized, listen, we miss a bit of force on force. This was way before people even knew about airsoft. Blades and triggers only had like single shot airsofts in those days. So in a strange way, I ordered some airsofts from France. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Slide action worked, everything, but it still had a little bit of a tube and the gas bottle in there. And then we started airsoft, and we started learning from there. And that's where everything started off. And everything started making, I started following all his work. Then later I brought out DVDs and then it was apps, but that's a whole progression. So my whole fighting system was based on what I do. But what we have to realize, any person, especially overseas, that you might follow is the American way, or the American self-defense nowadays is a lot. You see a lot of jiu-jitsu coming in and things like that. And you see a lot of videos coming out. What they sometimes call self-defense, we call a bar fight. Okay. What you and me call, what you and me, I mean, if you're going to go in a bar fight, one-on-one, you have the jiu-jitsu, you floor that guy. But what's our reality? What's your and my reality? 3-4 armed attackers.
Yes.
Okay, that's our reality. So I had to adapt what I've learned from these videos and whatever. And I've hosted Kelly as well a couple of times in South Africa. I had to adapt to, most of our encounters are lethal. Most of our encounters have multiple opponents and they're armed. So we had to tweak the system. But why it made sense, it was concept. It's a concept based. It's not based on technique. And this is where a lot of things fail. If you buy something on technique, and we can later unpack that. If you buy something on the technique, you have a specific technique for a specific attack at a specific angle. A lot of specifics needs to be met to be able to be successful. Violent confrontations, those indicators aren't going to be met. And you need a system that can adapt to whatever is happening. So that's kind of where I started.
Okay.
And just grew it from there. You know, 2 decades, 25 years later, we're still doing the same thing.
Now, if we talk about CQC, close quarter combat, I mean, it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, like tactical pens and tactical glasses and tactical everything. It's often misunderstood and or glamorized. From your perspective, how do you see close quarter combat really, like the real thing? And where do you think people are getting it wrong?
As you asked this question, my brain is running in like 60,000 different directions because it's not just a close quarter issue, it's a training issue in general. But let's condense it down to close quarters. Now, just a disclosure. A lot of people sometimes say, oh, you're talking about me. I follow a lot of instructors, local and abroad, out of fantasy. But what a lot of people don't realize, the moment I follow them, I kind of hit the unfollow button, or, not or block or whatever, not to see their work, because I don't believe in looking at the competition. So it's not based, what I'm going to say is not based on anybody specifically. But in general terms, from what I see on the internet nowadays, and I'm going to call a spade a spade. Maybe you should cut this out. But what we have today is, in many instances, exhibition shooting dressed up as training. Training without substance or without a lot of substance. And we can talk about this for hours. There's actually a lot to unpack here, but we're going to try to, for this one, we're just going to try to streamline and just get to the point that you're asking. If you think about how many videos, and I've done it myself, and I tell the people, don't share, just look, it's stupid. How many times on close quarter shooting have you seen the shooter stand, there's 3 targets in front of him, they draw at an amazing pace, get that first shot at half a second, bam, 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 and shoot, and it's over and done with.
Yes.
What exactly does that mean? Does it address how did you get into that confrontation? How are you now just drawing and shooting? What led up to it? Aren't your hands busy? But let's just say, all things fair, there's 3 Mughals standing there wanting to attack you, you draw fast. And let's say you are lucky and you neutralize the first threat in 1.5 seconds. Let's say everything works out wonderfully. You neutralize that person in 1.5 seconds. Have we forgotten about the tulip drills and things like that? Have we forgotten that an average person can move in and around 7 meters in 1.5 seconds? So let's say you've got 3 attackers. You're neutralizing this guy in 1.5 seconds, but there's 2 or 3 more. It takes them about 1/4 of a second to realize, okay, shit, something's happening. Let's say you give them a second. You've got 2 attackers. That gives them a combined movement of 10 meters. Where are they now? Have they run away? Are they attacking you?
Yes.
But you are now shooting out of memory. It's like sports shooting. I love sports shooting. Sports shooting is shooting under stress, under memory. Tactical training is shooting under stress by problem solving. So once you do that, you stand there and you shoot that, you're shooting at 3 static targets. It's a pre-programmed draw with no reaction from them. I just don't get it. I don't get it how you think you're just going to shoot at still standing targets. If your close quarter instructor takes you to the range and have you firing at static targets and tell you this is close to real life, please leave. Because this is what people miss. You cannot do close quarter training without actually going to the gym. Close quarter training is, all statistics are made up on the point, are mainly gym-based force on force training with rounding it off at the range because you cannot simulate on the range what you are going to find in the gym. The range is literally the basics, the core foundation of close quarter shooting. But the way you're actually going to shoot in real life is way different, but you need that basics. So shooting at those static targets are the basics, but you have to adapt the basics to the environment and scenario, and it looks completely different. It just blows my mind that you can do a close quarter course, and nobody gets, well, how is that close quarters? Nobody tries to stab you. How is that close quarters? How are we just riding static people there and showing? It's just glorifying. So what a trainer will do, he will just train that a couple of thousand times, put it in YouTube, it looks good. I mean, that's stupid. I can take any reasonable shooter, give me a day, and I'll have you draw and fire from attention in 1/2 second. I'll have you do that. You just need some time and ammo. But there's no substance towards this. It looks cool, it sells. There's a reason why people do that. There's a huge reason why trainers do that. I'm not going to go into that. The industry changed a lot over the years because it's knocking on your inner Jason Bourne. So the old saying is, and I've confronted some trainers and I asked them, listen, why are you selling this? The answer is, but this is what the people want. It's a huge difference between what people want and what they need. And unfortunately, what they need doesn't sell. What they want sells good. So, and this is a problem with marketing. Now you have to change your marketing strategy. Now you have to put rubbish videos out to get views. I always said, if I have to do that to stay in training, I'll just get out of training. I am not willing to sell myself. You can go look at my videos. I've got sub-second draws and all of those things, but I tell people, listen, I'm just showing you this, but this is not the reality.
Yes.
But I just like, if I have to sell training like that, I don't want to sell. And this is one of the reasons why close quarters are the most difficult one to sell. If you want to sell it, not in the best way, but in a more realistic way. It's going to hurt. You're going to have to punch. You're going to have to kick. You're going to have to understand fighting. Because how else do you learn how to fight? You have to fight. So I could go on for hours on why the industry train changed and how they changed. But yeah, but as I said, training isn't reality. But the two right now is so wide apart, reality and training, it's not even close. Not that all those training are useless. I'm not saying that. There are valid points in that training, but you're getting a half a cookie and not a full freaking.
I want to expand on that. For a close quarter range type of let's call it an interaction, shall we? A robbery, a home invasion, a sudden attack anywhere, whatever. What would you say are the non-negotiables? You know, the principles or habits that will help you to stay alive longer. Because, as you say, a lot of shooters focus very heavily on the range, the accuracy, speed drills, that sort of stuff. But that's, as you've now explained, that's one side of the story. What would you say are the critical gaps when you take that shooter into a real close quarter environment? So what are the critical gaps and what are the non-negotiables? And maybe those two go hand in hand.
Riaan, why are you asking questions that can't be answered? That's a very difficult, because the non-negotiable is you understand, no, I understand what you're asking, but it's almost like, give me 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 1 = 2 doesn't exist. I cannot, and I will not market myself, but I'm like, I've written a book and I'll show the people and I'm selling it out now. If you want to kind of know the basics of the concept of staying alive, understand, it's a whole concept. However, I will bring it down for myself. I refuse to believe my own bullshit, and I understand that even what I train has got its limits, and I have to understand that combatives works most of the time against most of people, but it doesn't work all of the time against all attackers. I have to accept that no system is the end all and be all, and this is the greatest. What I won't accept is dying, losing, all these catchphrases, but seeing my ass in a fight because I didn't train and because I didn't work on my mental capacity and because of my fitness. Those are the three non-negotiables. Yes, as we get older, I'm seeing a specialist for knees and shoulders on Monday, whatever. It gets more difficult to train and you have to train around it. But I refuse to lose because I didn't prepare. Now, when I say refuse to lose, because I didn't prepare, is what I mean by that. I'm not going to stand in my gym here and an hour do dry firing on draws. Why would I do that? To get a sub-second draw. So I can spend an hour on that, but I exit that and I open my garage door and the guy comes and he stabs a knife in my throat. You and me, we have no idea how we're going to be attached. So I have to say, generally, I'm going to prepare for as much as I can, not focusing on one specific skill to sell, be reasonably good at everything and say it's fine. So if I needed a sub-second draw, I have to live with it and say, okay, I didn't get a sub-second draw. But the chances of me having to have that specific thing to win in a fight is so low. Or I have to split at this or that. No, I'm rather going and saying, I'm preparing for everything. Think about this now. And I say this, you said home invasion. Oh, my camera's going a little bit skew here. Okay, so you talk about home violence course, a vehicle violence course, and these things. And I always ask the people, I said, they come on a course like that and said, okay, how's your fighting skills? And they look at me like, what do you mean? I said, why are you coming on a home invasion or house clearance course if you don't have unarmed skills? Say, what do you mean? Okay, so you tell me. It's crucial to know how to clear a room. It's, however, single person is freaking stupid. It's the most stupidest thing that you can do. But if you go and attach in a home, what do you find mostly? Oh, there was a struggle, there was a fight with the attackers. You don't hear about the guy, oh, I searched my room, on a white horse. Most of the times they were surprised, ambushed, they were on top of them. I'm like, so yes, you need to clear corners, slice the pie, all of those things. But I'm Watching TV, they break through my door, and the next moment they're on top of me. That should be part of it. Vehicle the same. I get out of the garage, I get up, poof, gun is against my head. That's part and parcel of the vehicle thing. So I believe in training holistically as much as I can, but I do not seek solutions for problems that don't exist. This is what the training does. They seek solutions for, it's difficult to explain this, but sometimes when I look at drills, I'm like, what are you trying to solve? There's no problem that you're trying to solve. It's just made up bullshit at the end of the day to get views and likes. So, but I also say, if a fight happens, I must go back home and be okay with whatever my response has been. You must make the decision. You cannot go into a fight thinking, am I going to be raped in prison? Are they going to lock me up? You cannot think about the consequences.
Yes.
And too many people think about consequences. And I think, especially on home invasions, a lot of people get into fights, physical fights, because A, they were overthinking the consequences, and B, they didn't know how to shoot and fight in a close environment. And you cannot do that. Once you say your life is in threat, you must go for it.
You must go for it. That actually brings me directly to the next question that I want to ask you. How important, because in this kind of scenario, everything is fast, it's violent, and it might be dark, maybe you can't see properly. There's a lot of things that can be going on in that moment. How important is decision making in that moment versus pure shooting skill? And then at the same time, how do you train someone to try and guide them to make the better call under pressure?
It's Saturday morning, Rian. After this, I must go train. You are draining my mind here. Too much thinking. Okay, so yes. No, you are 100% right. And this is what a lot of people don't forget. The thing that's been thrown around, muscle memory, and you will revert back to your training and things like that. Muscle memory doesn't exist. It's a motor memory. It's a complete different thing than, because we are repeating what thought was muscle memory in the 60s and 70s. Later on, they figured out something different. And then you will fight the way you train. Now, I've seen people train. I hope and pray you don't fight the way you train. Because the way you train is so far removed from a fight. Yes. It's not even funny. But yes. So time, distance, violence, all these things play an influence. I want to say the greater the distance, the more the time, okay? It's almost easier to revert back to training and have some cognitive thought. And this is what people don't understand. Physiological effects of duress, all these things are going to kick in. We all know about what happens to heart rate, what part of the mind works, all these type of things. In a close quarter environment, people think you're going to have to work on reflex. You cannot, or on what you've trained, or on motor memory. In a close, violent confrontation, you have to have some cognitive thought of what's going on. Why? Especially if you base your training on technique. So a technique is A, B, C, D. Okay, oh yeah, the technique works. Now you go A and I miss, and now B, C, and D is not going to be there. You now have to adapt, have some cognitive thought, adapt on what's going wrong, based on your principles, branch out and solve the problem. We do too much training, perfect world outcomes. How many videos have you seen of native packs and training, whatever? They always catch the arm, they get the guy to the ground, ooh, and I win. You never see people showing, listen, what do I do when I get it wrong? I prefer to train to get it wrong and then to fix it. Okay, it's like amateurs train till they get it right, professionals train, they can't get it wrong. It's nonsense. I'm trying to get it wrong. If I'm not getting it wrong, I'm not training hard enough. My partner is not going hard enough because I need to fail somewhere. So I have to have cognitive thought on how to fix the problem in front of me. You have to speed up your OODA loop immensely. And Rian, the only way you can do that is to actually get physical. That's the only way you can achieve it. This is why pure close quarter fighting don't sell. If you have 1,000 possible students, maybe 500 will run to a gun training. Maybe 15 will run to a fighting training. I've seen this. You advertise a house penetration course, 16 people pitch up. You do a fighting course, nobody wants to book because people are scared. There's a lot of reasons why they don't want to do it. But the only way that you can learn to fight is to fight. Now, when I say we're not going to go MMA and move each other and go to the hospital, but recency and frequency of violent training is the best way to get your mind ready for a real life encounter. Yes, you can mental imagery and all these type of things. But remember, the mind goes and look and say, what do I do under duress? And if it doesn't have files in there, it kind of go blank. But if you've trained enough, and not just that, you get comfortable with it. It's like, I almost want to say, it sounds weird to say outer body experience. And I've had it in a real fight. Something happens, and it's like almost I remove myself and look from the side in and say, okay, what's happening there? Because it doesn't make me uncomfortable. I'm not good, but I'm okay with being uncomfortable. And that's something, for instance, that jiu-jitsu, just an example, is an awesome thing to do. Because that's freaking uncomfortable the whole day, all day, every day, when people are following you or whatever. It's getting used to be uncomfortable, getting used to fight within limits, fight, safety gear and all those things. You owe it to yourself. Why did you buy a gun? This is now all of a sudden a cop-out. Because I have a gun, I don't need to do anything else. But how am I going to learn to fight? I can stand on the range, target, boom, 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 boom. How do I actually learn to fight? Even if it's not a physical, touching distance. This is still a fight. And they see this Steyrs and Applegate or whatever, modern guys or combatives doing in the 40s and 60s, they've seen it in military. They've seen that soldiers will go into battle, when we're talking about specialist units, and they would deliberately not shoot the enemy because they didn't want to. You know what they introduced? Boxing and catch wrestling. They had the guys move each other. And that changed the whole mindset. And I walks into the battlefield. He now goes into that fighting mode, and they had more success. Now, today they do it a little bit differently, but that's what they introduced to get hit ratios from soldiers up. And that is, you can do a lot of other stress inoculation training, but your pyramid is your baseline, is your basics, essentials, your normal stuff. Then it's kind of your scenario training, home violence, vehicle violence, all those things. And at the top tier, smallest tier, it's the smallest one, because if you don't have these two, this is not going to work. The top one, you have to have, let's call it force and force training. I don't like the word force and force training, but training where you actually get physical.
Yes.
And that top tier is not nobody, where most people don't want to train. That's the most fun part of training. Okay. Once you get back and you get up and say, I can do this, you feel good. Even the women feel good after they get bruised and say, I can do this. Because you have to ask yourself, can you do it? Can you do it? Because people are afraid. What am I going to do if somebody punches me? I'm going to fall. And then you realize you don't fall and die.
And let's be honest, it kind of sucks if you, even if you're wearing one of those helmets that for training, and you get a punch against the head, it's a little bit too hard.
Do you know that helmets makes the punches actually worse? It stops you from getting cuts and bruises. But we put on the helmets, we can find about the helmets because you don't have all that shit. But it is. But you have to do it, crawl around, walk, whatever. You have to do it slowly. And then eventually you give the student the free will to do what they do. And this is also, when people get it wrong, they train on technique, but they use meat puppets or the pillar technique. And you see this all over the place. So you go somewhere and they teach you, this is what I'm going to stab. And the instructor will tell you, if you catch the arm like this, the bad guy will do this. Who knows what the bad guy will do? But now I'm training my opponent how to respond when I attack him. Where we go, right, you've got one goal. Okay. Stab him in the face and react anyway. Then all of a sudden, it's the ugliest thing you've ever seen. Then all of a sudden, all these cool techniques just fall over the way. If you start giving a person free will and you don't indoctrinate him how he should respond, just respond on, I don't want him to get my knife and I'm going to stab him again. You get a different response. You know what's the worst person to ever train or fight against? the untrained person. It's when we do knife stuff, it's easier to fight a trained person who knows his angles and what he's going to do than Mr. Numbnuts. I say, try to stab me. You know how many beginners understand me? Like, where did you get up with an angle like this? And it happens. It happens.
Yeah, because they don't think about it. It just comes. There's no preconceived ideas.
Like,
Yes.
you know, quick thing on a knife attack and probably even on a gun attack. What's the 3 parts that I need to stab you? There's only 3 things I need. I need to be close enough, I need to be willing, and I need to be fast enough. That's all I need. I need no skill. That's all I need. On a gun, almost the same. I need to be close enough, I need to be fast enough, and I need to be accurate enough to be able to hit. That's all I need. And also remember, you know, I always joke, we stand in front of these targets. If you can shoot the target can shoot you as well. And that people don't address. We're shooting at targets, doing some weird things, but if I can see and shoot the target, unless we're talking about cover, the target can shoot me as well, and we don't address that.
Well, I trust that by now viewers will have started thinking for themselves as to why it's actually important in terms of survivability to investigate something like a good close quarter combat course, purely because you're always juggling the odds, and the more you can juggle the odds in your favor, the better for yourself at the end of the day. So, Arno, you are now teaming up with Fortis Proactive Defense Solutions for this close quarter combat course. Can you just give us a little idea of the thinking behind it? What are you bringing to the table that people won't get from a typical firearms or self-defense type of course? In other words, why should people, when this course comes out, why should they come and do this?
Market yourself. You know, Rian, I don't do marketing. You see, I hate marketing and I hate boosting myself. It's biggest load of crap. And I warned Dion. I said, don't partner up with me. I'm going to chase your people away. Plus, we are trying to sell the most difficult course. But I was honest with him. I said, listen, Dion, you know that what we're trying to sell is the most difficult one. It's the most uncomfortable course. And you're going to battle to get the people on the course. And he said, no, it's fine. We're going to do it. And still, right now, I owe him the outline. But I'm battling with what we want to do, a 5 or a 6 tire, because, and people, if you are interested, listen to me carefully, especially in the beginning, we need more gym days than shooting days. But people want to be on the range. So I'm just battling with do we do it a 5-day or a 6-day? Because if we do it a 5-day, we are not doing enough unarmed stuff. Because where do we need to start? Punch and kicks and strikes, and there's so much that we just need to get you fighting. And then even in 5 days or 6 days, I'm going to get you to fight. No, but I can give you principles to fight. Now, you know, Rian, I hate saying, you know, you owe it to yourself. You live in South Africa. It's so dangerous. You know, if you don't understand how dangerous it is, you're stupid. Okay? I'm not going to use examples and say, oh, look at how people get killed. You must come and train. It must be a personal thing and say, you know, I think it's become popular on the internet where people say, I'm willing to die for my family. And then the clever guys will say, okay, well, are you then willing to live for your family, train, get fit, get all around it? And then the guys go, but I'll die for them. Okay, you'll die for them, but why not live for them and train in a difficult, not more realistic, but train in a way that can up your odds of survival in a fight. Okay, so it is, if you're doubting yourself and you're not sure, go to a friend's house, give him a stick in the hand and say, listen, try to stab me as hard as you can and see if you can deal with it. Okay, just to give an idea and see how difficult that is. I believe you owe it to yourself, but yeah, Marian, it's a difficult one. This is almost a step that you make from, and I have to choose my words carefully, from being a hobbyist to a practitioner. When you do close quarter battle, Yeah, and you start getting the fighting bit and whatever. You start transitioning from it being a hobby to being a practitioner. Now, practitioner doesn't mean, oh, mantra and I follow. No, it just means now you're bridging the gap between pure shooting and actual preparing for fight. No guarantee, it might not work. We know. But I tell you, you will enjoy it, you will learn so much about yourself, and you will grow, not technically, but you will grow as a person and say, listen, I can do this. It's like that joke. You walk into the BP and whatever, the guy pulls out a knife, I must almost smile and say, dude, I do this for fun. Realizing that it's very easy for him to stab me, but that's where you should come to. If somebody wants to attack you, say, okay, I'm not happy you attacked me. I hate it. I never want to be attacked again. But if it happens, you must go and say, this is what I do. So I'm prepared. So, but I hate selling it. But
I think
and you know me, Rian, I can't sell things. I can't. I think you sent me a picture of what this is going to look like, and I think somewhere you said expert, and I wanted to cringe, and I'm like,
I
what
knew
do you
you
mean
would.
expert? I hate that type of stuff. This is one of the reasons I should market more, but this is one of the reasons I don't market much more because it starts becoming self-glorification. And this is what I see. Instructors are glorifying themselves instead of giving information to people. And I hate that. We are only trainers, you know. We are so low on the totem pole of important jobs in the world. And sometimes I think we should just get back in that space. But guys, if you are, don't even think about it. Sign up. You are going to enjoy it. You're going to be nervous. You're going to be
If I
skeptical.
can if I can add if I can add to that is it's gonna be hard. Don't fool yourself. It's gonna be you're gonna work hard.
Yeah.
You're gonna
Let's be honest with
yes, you're gonna be sore, your body's gonna be sore. You're gonna know all about it. You're gonna be tired, you're gonna flip and hate Arno's guts. And
I have my own guts. Okay, so it's fine.
but when it's done, the empowerment factor cannot be quantified in monetary terms because the empowerment factor of doing something like this and getting through it is absolutely next level. And in terms of your own personal safety, without trying to sound overly Hollywood-like, but I think you do owe it to yourself because at the end of the day, your life is worth putting yourself in uncomfortable training spaces like this. Does that make sense?
I will go that far and say, if you go through this journey, not just your fighting, your shooting will even improve. Because the biggest thing that happens on a training course like this is at some stage, you find the mindset switch. Now, a lot of people think they have it. They don't. You find the mindset switch. And for some people, it's a day 1. For some people, it's a day 4. Some people, it's a day 5. But when you find that switch, everything turns around. Everything, the way you think, the way you act, the way you go to the range, everything changes like that. And this one, if you find that switch, I guarantee you will improve in your shooting, you will improve just about in everything because you will find that mindset switch. And once you find that, you're going to be a different person. Absolutely. I almost sound like these preachers now. I see instructors like doing podcasts on how to raise your kids and whatever. I'm like, sorry, what is wrong with this world? But honestly, if you get that mindset switch, it's a different ballgame. It's a different ballgame.
So, if you got value from this, please hit the like and subscribe button. Smash that bell icon so you can get notifications of future videos and share this with someone who takes their personal safety seriously. And if this conversation even planted a hint in your mind that your current training is not entirely enough, then hopefully we've made you think about this some more. And hopefully you will be one of the first people to sign up for this course as soon as it comes out. Drop your thoughts and your questions in the comments. Let us know, is this a level of training that you would consider? And as always, check for the link in the description below to all the loan operator and Fortis Fortis Proactive Defense training. There's a link in the description below. Check it out. We look forward to seeing you on a range one of these days. Stay safe, stay aware, and I'll see you on the next one. Arno, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dio, Riaan, and everybody at Fortis. Looking forward to this venture. Thank you.